Have you ever truly wondered about the boundaries of the human mind? Like, what happens when those boundaries get tested or maybe even breached by, well, external forces?
The deep question, for sure.
Yeah, and today we're taking a deep dive into some really startling claims. We're talking alleged mind control, government programs, real-world impacts. It's a lot.
And we've got quite the stack of sources to get through. Everything from, like, a Wikipedia page about a famous model to a Supreme Court petition.
Exactly. So we'll be unpacking claims that really stretch how we think about privacy, technology, human rights. You name it. Our mission really is to pull out the key bits of info, the important insights from all this material to help you get informed on these, well, complex and definitely controversial topics.
Yeah, hopefully with some surprising facts along the way. Keep things interesting.
Right. So, sources at a glance. We've got that Wikipedia entry on Candy Jones' model radio host and this very detailed Supreme Court petition from Stan J. Catterbone. He's alleging a long history of government mind control stuff.
These are definitely heavy topics, but wow, they are compelling. It's like a unique window into these persistent allegations that have been around for decades.
Definitely. So, with those sources in mind, let's jump into the first one, the really extraordinary claims of Candy Jones.
Yep.
So, who was she? Born Jessica Arline Wilcox, right? And back in the 40s and 50s, she was a major icon, a top fashion model, pinup girl, apparently super tall, like 6'4".
Wow. Yeah, later she became a radio talk show host, and that's kind of where her story takes this really dramatic, unexpected turn.
It really does. It was after she married Long John Nebel, another radio host in 1972, he started noticing things.
Right, like violent mood swings. And
Yeah.
sometimes she seemed to have this totally different personality pop up, which he called the voice. It would just sort of appear and disappear.
Super unsettling. And this is where it gets, well, almost stranger than fiction. Nebel, who was known for discussing paranormal stuff, conspiracies, that kind of thing, on his show, he starts hypnotizing Jones. And under hypnosis, boom, a whole other personality comes out, named Arlene.
And Arlene, allegedly, starts spilling this incredibly elaborate story about Jones being trained in a CIA mind control program, starting way back in 1960.
Yeah, under hypnosis, Jones or Arlene claimed she was recruited by an old USO acquaintance, some unnamed retired Army general.
How did that supposedly happen?
Well, initially, he just asked if he could use her modeling school as like a mailing address. Pretty innocuous, right?
It seems that way.
But then she was asked to deliver a letter to a Dr. Jensen who'd treated her years before, back in 45 in the Philippines, and his associate, a Marshall Berger.
Okay, and Marshall Berger was supposedly Dr. William S. Kroger.
Allegedly, yeah. And Jones apparently agreed to do this because, well, her modeling school was struggling financially and she needed money to keep her sons in private schools.
So sort of understandable motivation, maybe, if you accept the premise.
Right. So this Arlene personality was then reportedly groomed by this Dr. Jensen for covert work, sending her on trips even as far as Taiwan.
And the claims get pretty dark, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Jones alleged, under hypnosis, that she was tortured, like subjected to really painful stuff during these sessions.
Torture. Why?
To test Arlene's effectiveness, apparently, to make sure this alternate personality could handle being a messenger for the agency, during her regular business trips abroad. She even suspected a USO trip to South Vietnam in 1970 might have been linked to, like, a failed attempt to free American POWs.
Wow. That's intense. And these claims eventually went public.
They did, yeah. In 1976, with a book by Donald Bain called The Control of Candy Jones.
And did Bain find anything to back this up? Or was it just her hypnotic testimony?
Well, Bain reported that people who worked at her modeling school did notice she had these puzzling absences. Times she was just gone, couldn't be reached. Things that didn't quite add up with normal business.
Okay.
And then there was physical stuff found later, like a passport for an Arlene Grant. It had Jones's picture, but she was wearing a dark wig and makeup. And Jones herself claimed she had zero memory of ever getting this passport or posing for that photo.
That is weird, an actual passport.
Apparently. And there's more. Like a strange message left on their answering machine in July 73 from Japan Airlines for a Miss Grant on a flight to Tokyo with an option to go on to Taipei.
Okay.
When Jones called back, she asked for the name given in the message, Cynthia, but the airline said no one named Cynthia worked at the reservations desk. It was all very mysterious.
Definitely adds to the intrigue.
Plus, there was a letter she wrote to her lawyer, William Williams, where she basically said she couldn't reveal what she was involved in. She wasn't at liberty to say.
So putting this all together, How do we even assess these kinds of claims, especially ones coming out under hypnosis?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And what makes it even more complex is the timing. Her story really blew up after the public found out about Project MKULTRA in 1977.
Right, the actual documented CIA mind control program involving illegal experiments on unwitting subjects.
Exactly. So when you have this official acknowledgement of some kind of secret mind control work, even if limited,
It suddenly gives a framework, maybe even a strange kind of credibility, to personal stories like Jones's, however fantastical they might sound on their own. It really blurs that line between documented history and these individual allegations. It challenges your whole perception of what could be real.
totally. So, okay, that's the Candy Jones story, hinting at this hidden history. But what about now? Are there similar claims today?
Well, that brings us neatly to our second main source, Stan J. Caterbone.
Right, the guy who filed that petition with the Supreme Court,
Right.
pro se, meaning he represented himself, no lawyer.
Yeah. And his claims are, well, they're contemporary. He alleges he's been a victim of U.S.-sponsored mind control since 2005.
What kind of mind control?
He talks about things like synthetic telepathy and being targeted by electromagnetic weapons.
Wow, okay, that sounds very sci-fi.
It does. But what's really striking, I think, is how he connects his own alleged experiences to his family's history. He suggests it's not just him, it's like a multi-generational thing.
Multi-generational targeting, how so?
Well, his petition lays out allegations about his father, Samuel P. Caterbone, Jr. He claims his father was also a victim of synthetic telepathy and maybe even a covert carrier for intelligence agencies.
Any evidence cited for that?
He points to his father having 3 passports, showing a lot of travel: Hong Kong, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, places like that. Plus, his father had a known history of mental health issues, including electroshock therapy, and apparently a criminal record, too.
And his death.
His father died in 2001, just 6 weeks after getting an inheritance. And Caterbone, or at least sources he cites, suggests it was more likely foul play than suicide, maybe even murder.
Okay, that's intense. And it doesn't stop with the father, right? There are allegations about his brothers, too.
Correct. One brother, Samuel A. Caterbone, allegedly accused the government of using him in LSD experiments, specifically mentioning MKULTRA while he was in the Air Force between 68 and 70.
MKULTRA again.
Yeah. And apparently this brother talked about having bad LSD trips before he died in 1984. That death was ruled as suicide. But again, Stan Caterbone and others questioned it, alleging foul play.
This is building quite a picture. Was there another brother mentioned?
Yes, Thomas P. Caterbone. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and manic depression. His death in 1996, also ruled as suicide, is linked in the petition to embezzlement and extortion.
And there was something about the locations or timing.
Yeah, the petition makes a point of noting that Thomas died on Kill Devil Island, North Carolina, and Samuel A. died on Christmas Day 1984. It suggests that this points to some kind of atheist theme, which is an interesting interpretation.
Definitely adds another layer of conspiracy thinking.
Right. And whether these specific interpretations are provable or not, what's clear is how Caterbone weaves together personal family trauma, unexplained deaths, mental health struggles, into this larger narrative of systemic secret government action against his family for generations. It creates this really compelling personal story, even if it's, unverified.
So why does he think he is being targeted now? Does he connect it to anything specific he did?
He does. He links his alleged victimization directly to his own whistleblowing activities, starting back in 1987.
Whistleblowing about what?
About a defense contractor called International Signal and Control, or ISC. He claims there was this vast civil conspiracy that started way back then to cover up fraud within ISC.
And he believes this conspiracy is targeting him personally.
Yes. He alleges things like warrantless surveillance, obstruction of justice, being denied access to courts. He even claims he's had over 30 arrests since 1987 that were ultimately dismissed, usually before they even got to a hearing or trial. He calls them false arrests and malicious prosecutions.
So he's painting a picture of someone being systematically harassed for speaking out.
That's the core of his argument, yeah. And it raises that bigger question about what happens to people who try to expose alleged wrongdoing, especially involving powerful government or corporate entities. Do they face retaliation? Are they targeted?
And he believes his case, combining his personal experience and his family history, is significant.
Very much so. The petition argues that all this stuff, the cumulative results, lays the groundwork for what he calls an unprecedented landmark case of human rights violations and antitrust violations. He's essentially saying, look at this pattern going back decades.
Okay, so both the Jones story and the Catterbone allegations, they mention things like mind control, synthetic telepathy, electromagnetic weapons. It sounds so futuristic almost. Is there any alleged science or technology discussed in these sources that's supposed to be behind it all?
Yes, absolutely. The sources, particularly Catterbone's petition materials, do get into the alleged mechanisms. They talk about something called remote neural monitoring, or RNM.
Remote neural monitoring. Okay, what's that supposed to be?
According to these sources, it's a technology supposedly developed by the NSA, and the claim is pretty stunning, that it can basically control the human brain and even detect any criminal thought taking place inside the mind.
Whoa, control the brain, detect thoughts. How?
Imagine being able to, tune into the faint electrical signals your brain naturally produces. The sources claim RNM uses focused electromagnetic frequencies. Think invisible energy waves aimed at the brain.
Okay.
These EMF waves supposedly excite specific brain areas, allowing the system to record the electrical activity, essentially listening in on brain function. And they claim it can even translate verbal thoughts, the things you think in words, inside your head.
That's deeply unsettling. But it gets weirder, right? It's not just listening.
Right. The claims go further, that RNM isn't just passive monitoring. It can allegedly send encrypted signals back into the brain.
Send signals. To do what?
To directly stimulate the auditory cortex, making you hear things that aren't there, or project visual images into your mind. Even, supposedly, instill specific words and numbers into the brain through radiation waves.
So like planting thoughts or commands.
That's the implication. And maybe the most out there claim is that it can manipulate the person being monitored, creating illusions or entire experiential sets that feel completely real but aren't.
Making someone experience a false reality. Wow. Okay, how far back does this kind of thinking go? Is this purely a modern digital age fear?
Not according to these sources. They trace the roots back much further. They mention early hypnosis research, like back in the 1920s.
1920s.
Yeah, a Harvard guy named George Estabrooks. He apparently talked openly about using hypnosis to create amnesiac couriers, basically spies who could deliver messages and then have no memory of doing it if they were caught, like a real-life Manchurian candidate kind of thing.
Okay, so the idea of controlling minds for espionage isn't new. What about the technology evolving?
Well, then you jump to the 1960s. There was work by Jose Delgado at Yale. Initially, he was using physical implants in the brains of animals, and even humans, to stimulate responses.
Actual implants. Okay.
But the sources claim, by the mid-80s, Delgado reportedly figured out you didn't actually need the implants.
No implants. Then how?
He supposedly discovered you could achieve similar effects just by manipulating the energy fields themselves. Remote influence without physical invasion.
That's a huge leap. From wires in the brain to invisible energy waves.
Exactly. It marks this alleged shift towards more subtle, remote forms of influence. The sources even mention that theoretically only a tiny fraction of the Earth's natural background energy, if focused correctly at the right frequencies, could potentially influence human behavior.
That sounds like something else entirely. Does HARP come into this? I feel like I've heard about HARP in conspiracy circles.
It does get mentioned, yeah. The HARP system, developed around the 1990s, the claim in these sources is that it pulses the ionosphere, that upper layer of the atmosphere.
Okay, why?
To bounce back extremely low frequency signals, ELF signals to Earth.
ELF signals, and what do they supposedly do?
According to the sources, these ELF signals can potentially agitate the population in very specific ways, make people passive or aggressive, influence mood on a large scale.
Affecting whole population.
That's the claim. Also, that these signals can cause an entrainment effect on the human mind.
Entrainment.
Yeah.
Like syncing up brainwaves.
Sort of, yeah. Like getting your brainwaves to follow an external rhythm, which could subtly influence mood or focus, often without you even realizing it. And the source argues this wasn't just some accidental side effect of HARP, it was an intended consequence.
Okay, this is painting a picture of a long history of development, almost like an arms race.
That's exactly the term used in the sources. A mind control arms race.
They try to link current alleged U.S. programs back to things like the Soviets bombarding the U.S. embassy in Moscow with microwaves in the 50s.
I've heard about that embassy incident.
And even back to German psychological warfare programs in the 1940s, it's presented as this continuous secret competition.
And they connect this to modern military structures.
Yeah, the petition specifically notes the recent creation of a new military space agency, likely referring to the Space Force as a step towards formalizing the weaponization of space, including microwave weapons.
Is there any, concrete proof offered for these remote manipulation technologies? besides the allegations?
Well, the Caterbone petition frequently cites the Malek patent, patent number 3951134. Okay, what's that for?
It was granted in 1976, and the title is Apparatus and Method for Remotely Monitoring and Altering Brainwaves.
Remotely monitoring and altering brainwaves? A patent from 1976.
That's what it says. So proponents use this patent as evidence that the basic technological capability, or at least the concept, has existed for a long time.
Wow. Okay, the implications of all this, if any of it is true, for just personal freedom, privacy, it's staggering.
Absolutely. It raises fundamental questions about autonomy in our increasingly digital and, well, interconnected world.
So, given claims this huge, this potentially damaging, are people like Caterbone just shouting into the void? Or are there actual legal battles happening?
Oh, there are definitely legal battles, or at least attempts at them. Caterbone Supreme Court petition case number 1810134 is a prime example.
And what was he asking the Supreme Court to do exactly?
He was trying to set a really significant precedent. He argued that habeas corpus—
That's the legal principle. You can't be held indefinitely without cause, right? You have the right to challenge your imprisonment.
Exactly, that fundamental right. Caterbone argued it shouldn't just apply to people physically locked in a brick-and-mortar prison.
Okay. So where should it apply?
He argued it should also extend to situations where someone is subjected to illegal surveillance, torture, and control of a victim's mind. Essentially saying you can be imprisoned within your own mind or by constant surveillance, and you should have the right to challenge that detention too.
That's a radical rethinking of habeas corpus. Did he cite any existing laws?
Yeah, he cited specific civil rights laws, like Section 1983. That's the law allowing people to sue government officials or entities for violating their constitutional rights.
He was looking for ways to get justice, maybe even trigger federal prosecution.
And his legal efforts weren't just about his own case, were they? He got involved in other high-profile situations.
That's right. It gets even more interesting. He filed amicus briefs. Those are friend of the court briefs, where an outside party offers information or perspective in some really big cases.
Like which ones? Like the case of Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland school shooter, and also the case of Sirhan Sirhan.
Sirhan. The man convicted of assassinating Robert F. Kennedy.
The very same. And in both cases, Caterbone alleged that these individuals were actually victims themselves.
Victims of what?
Of U.S.-sponsored mind control, or MKULTRA programs.
He claimed the Parkland shooter and RFK's assassin were mind-controlled.
That was his argument in the briefs, yes. And it's worth noting, the source mentions that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. himself has publicly stated he believes there was a second shooter involved in his father's assassination, and that Sirhan Sirhan might indeed have been a victim of CIA mind control, like a programmed assassin.
Wow. The idea that these infamous crimes could potentially be linked back to secret government programs, that's just astounding. It takes the implications to a whole different level.
It absolutely does. It inserts these already controversial theories directly into the narrative of major historical events and tragedies.
Okay, shifting slightly but related. The sources mention torture, both in Jones's claims and Caterbone's. What about remedies? If someone was tortured in one of these programs, is there any recourse?
That's a really sore point highlighted in the sources. They mentioned that back in the 90s, President Clinton actually made public apologies for past military and intelligence programs that used American citizens without consent.
Okay, apologies are one thing.
Exactly. But the sources point out what they call a resounding silence when it comes to actual specific reparations or remedies for the individuals who allegedly suffered torture in those programs. Apologies, but no follow-through on making amends, basically.
Is that different from how other countries handle it?
It seems so. The sources contrast the U.S. situation with international courts, like the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. They say that court has been pretty robust in ordering compensation and other remedial measures for victims of torture, even when the victims were, say, alleged paramilitary members. There's a track record internationally that seems to be missing domestically, according to these documents.
So a gap in accountability, potentially.
That's the argument being made, yes, especially concerning these historical and ongoing allegations.
And this ties back to the whistleblower aspect, too, right? Protecting people who speak out.
Definitely. The sources strongly emphasize the need to protect basic constitutional rights, especially for whistleblowers who claim they're facing things like warrantless surveillance or illegal programs to silence them.
Are there others besides Caterbone raising alarms about things like RNM?
Yes. The petition cites human rights advocates and scientists who apparently criticize RNM specifically. They call it an affront to basic human rights and something that fundamentally violates privacy and dignity.
So Caterbaum's petition is trying to pull all these threads together, the personal, the family history, the technology, the legal challenges.
Precisely. It suggests this isn't just one person's isolated experience, but maybe a pattern of behavior going way back, even to the targeting of his father in the 1960s. He presents it as this cumulative case, potentially a landmark example of human rights and even antitrust violations, if his claims about the conspiracy involving ISC hold water. It's a bid to challenge alleged systemic abuses.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today. Let's try to recap this deep dive.
Sounds good.
We started with the really incredible claims of Candy Jones, the famous model-turned-radio host, the alleged hypnosis sessions revealing the Arlene personality, and her detailed account of being recruited into a supposed CIA mind control program.
Right. And we explored Stanley Caterbaum's far-reaching allegations connecting his own claims of facing synthetic telepathy and electromagnetic weapons today, back through generations of his family history, linking it all to his whistleblowing activities.
Then we got into the weeds of the alleged technology behind it all. Remote neural monitoring, electromagnetic warfare, the historical context from early hypnosis and Delgado's implants, right up to HARP and ELF signals.
And that whole concept of a mind control arms race, including things like the Malek patent being cited as evidence.
And finally, we looked at the complex legal and ethical side, the attempts to get accountability through the courts, like Caterbaum's effort to expand habeas corpus, the amicus briefs in those shocking criminal cases, and the whole difficult issue of reparations for alleged torture versus just apologies.
Yeah, it paints a picture of a long, really controversial history surrounding mind control research, coupled with these persistent allegations that it's still happening secretly today.
It really does. And what's so fascinating, I think, is how these stories, Jones, from the mid-20th century, Caterbaum, now seem so different on the surface, but they weave together into this broader tapestry of concern.
Concerns about government secrecy, the power of advanced technology, and ultimately individual liberty. What does it mean to be free if your mind potentially isn't your own?
Exactly. It leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It really does. And maybe that brings us to a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, think about this. We live in an age now where the line between what's real and what's synthetically generated deepfakes, AI, virtual reality, is getting blurrier all the time.
True.
So in that kind of world, how do we, just as individuals, protect our own minds, our own sense of reality from potential manipulation? Whether it's from sophisticated technology like R&M is alleged to be, or just from the constant barrage of information and disinformation.
That's a heavy question.
It is. Maybe the deeper question is, what does true freedom even look like in a world where invisible forces, technological, psychological, political, might be allegedly or actually at play all around us?
Something to definitely ponder, a lot to think about from today's deep dive.